Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and whenever I'm in this part of the galaxy, I listen to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Makes flying a little more tolerable. Don't tell Anakin.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And this episode is our weekly look at some recent Star Wars news. But before we dive into the latest, Jay, remind everybody where we can be reached on social media.
Sure thing. And I apologize. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is not the greatest. But we are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The digital line, the signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So we don't really have a lot in solid Star Wars news, but there's some fun things to discuss. And it all kicks off with John Boyega talking a little bit about the new Jedi Order movie that will be featuring Rey. More specifically, he was asked on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, which was recording live on the stage at C2E2, about the new Jedi Order movie and whether he'd participate in it. And he was quoted saying, "I miss Daisy. I haven't seen Daisy face to face in a minute. I found out about Daisy's return online. Being a genuine fan, I'm online. I watch reaction videos. I'm on the subscriber list. I get the emails as if I'm not in the films, Star Wars, The Force Awakens comes out. Oh, does it?" And then he goes on to say, "It makes sense to expand the franchise in that way. I'm just looking forward first of all to see if it's real, because we have had a few Star Wars announcements, in development. They can't quite get it done. I'm just hoping that Daisy gets that chance to shine in a franchise that's finally hers as a Jedi that's fully qualified. I can't wait to watch it. I really can't. I'm happy for her." So he doesn't say anything officially one way or the other about whether he's going to be appearing in this movie as well. But at least in the moment, it doesn't sound like it. But what's your takeaway from all that?
What cracks me up the most, I think, is the part where he says, first of all, to see if it's real, because we've had a few Star Wars announcements, in development.
He's one of us.
I was going to say, it's like he's been listening to our podcast and he's been, experiencing the same kind of woes that we have. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it doesn't sound like he's really, giving any kind of inclination of anything going forward with him personally. But, if he's able to do it and he wants to do it, I hope he gets to.
Yeah. And, this, for all we know, he could have signed an NDA and is not permitted to even talk about this. And if that's the case, this is a very artful way of talking about that movie, talking about his appreciation for Daisy, and then not saying anything at all about being in the movie. And doesn't sound like he was pressed on that issue. And I respect that. It's one of those things where we know these actors have NDAs. They can't say anything about roles that they've taken until certain conditions have been met, or they can't say anything about their character until they've been given permission. So this could be, if he's in it, an announcement that Lucasfilm wants to sit on and generate some buzz when time's appropriate. But he's not wrong when he says, like you were just saying, we've seen plenty of these projects come up and then never ever happens. And we were just told at the end of last year by no less than Daisy herself that she was expecting to see a script imminently.
Right.
And then they had a new writer. So,
Yeah.
and this one was supposed to be the next movie after Mandalorian Grogu. Well, now it's the Sean Levy movie. And so what is happening? We don't know. So that being said, I believe we're going to see Daisy Ridley, whether it's in the new Jedi Order or it's in the Kinberg trilogy that's coming out. But we'll just have to wait and see which one comes around first.
Yep. All those things in development.
Mm-hmm. So elsewhere, Tony Gilroy was doing an interview with Entertainment Weekly, more specifically Dalton Ross over at Entertainment Weekly. And one of the topics that came up was, and spoilers for Andor season 2 if you haven't finished. So I'm going to give you a quick 5 seconds to stop or jump ahead about a couple of minutes on this one. But one of the questions that came up was, why wasn't there a Jyn Erso cameo at the end of Andor? Basically saying, the point being that we got to see Saw Gerrera, we got to see K2SO, Mon Mothma was in this. Lots of characters that were in Rogue One showed up here, so why not Jyn Erso? And basically, Tony's response was that would have been lame and it would have been disrespectful to Rogue One because he couldn't think of a good way to do it. I'm not sure that I disagree, but what do you think, Jay?
No, I think it was a good call on his part to keep the two entities kind of separate because, I mean, while I'll admit it would have been kind of cool to, once again, tie those threads together. As you mentioned, we had Saw and we had a lot of these other characters as well. Even Melshi and so on and so forth, although he was in the first season. But it's kind of the same thing. I was almost wondering if we were going to get to see Galen as well. And that was going to be
name
kind of
dropped a lot.
He did, and that's why I was thinking, maybe we'll get to see him. But I'm really glad that Tony Gilroy made the decision that he did because it does help to preserve that whole movie just a little bit more. Because I mean, let's face it, Jyn is the centerpiece of that film, if you will. And although some would argue now that Andor is actually more the centerpiece of Rogue One than Jyn is. But I think it was a good choice that he's keeping those two entities separated. I really do. But what did you think?
No, I think it was the right choice. If there was going to be other characters from Rogue One that they could have brought back, I think Chirrut and Baze might have made more sense. Only because of the line, when they get to Jeddah and Rogue One, it's almost like Cassian has run into them or their type before. He says they're just troublemakers that aren't doing any good for anybody at this point, or something like that in Rogue One. So some sort of a scene on the Holy City with those two. But I mean, come on, those are two big gets to get those actors in order to do that for probably would have been a small scene. May not have been worth the time or the investment to do so. And the only thing with regards to Jyn Erso that maybe I would have wanted to see in the end of Andor was maybe the council sitting around and there's this notion of, hey, we got this report of Alana Halleck being held on Mokabi. I can't remember. It's like an anagram
Wobani.
of Wobani, yeah, of Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we should go check that out just in case, and use her to go, because two things gets us in with Saw, and then maybe we can learn something more about Galen through that. That I said that really unartfully, but a clever writer could have come up with some reason there, because again, they've completely discounted the report that Cassian has brought them from, that went from Lonnie Jung to Luthen to Clea, and then she tells Cassian to tell the council. They completely discount it. They don't believe it. It's, you could, Luthen could have been being played by the Empire. It was what their thoughts were. But then why did they send someone after Jyn in that moment? What changed their minds is, I guess, what I'm getting at here. So some sort of a name dropping scene might have made sense right there. As Cassian's going off to the Ring of Frame to meet with Tivik. Well, the other thing that's happening at that same time is K2SO and Melshi go to find her. So
right, that's true.
Yeah. So that's just my thought on that. But no, I think it makes more sense that she was not included in that in the series. And I mean, I haven't seen Felicity Jones lately. Has she been doing much? But
That's
would they have
question.
been able to get her for this?
Mm-hmm.
I guess is the other thing.
Yeah, that's the big part, because you don't want a different actress to play her if you can help it.
Right. It was one thing to recast Bail Organa when Jimmy Smits was unavailable, but it would have been another to recast Jyn Erso with another actress for just a cameo on that. That definitely would not have been worth it.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else you wouldn't have seen in the end of Andor that we didn't get a chance to see?
Well, actually, since we're talking about Galen, I would love to have seen Lyra. Just a little bit of that as well.
Well, she would have been dead.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, because it would have been after that fact. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, scratch
Yeah.
that then. I don't want to see her. No.
Her gravesite, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
Oh gosh, I'd have to think about that one because I just think it ended so beautifully
Mhm.
that I felt very satisfied with the way that they left it, even though it was very sad at the end with Bix and the little bebe. But other
Or
than
maybe,
that, yeah.
Bodhi Rook showing up in Jaws
Oh
could have been a
yeah, that would
thing.
have been cool.
Yeah. But again, it's just did it need to be seen? Because they adequately cover that in the movie.
Mhm.
And the more we talk about this, I can see why Tony was like I know him, Tony. Why Tony Gilroy was against doing it. It's just like, are we putting it in there because it serves a story purpose or just because it's cool to do?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
not to say you can't do something just because it's cool, but does it accomplish something that didn't need to be done? So I don't
Right.
know. Like I
Right.
said, a name drop situation might have been the best way, or they could have done in that same thing, had a meeting of the councils. Like there's reports of this Imperial pilot that's got news or something like that, but even that wasn't even believed in Rogue One. So I'm talking myself out of these things as we go through it. So anyway.
No, I think all the decisions that were made were good ones.
Mhm. All right. Well, moving on, and you and I had kind of talked about this via text over the course of the week, but they've had a Star Wars event going on in Fortnite, and we kind of mentioned that a few times on the podcast as well. But earlier this week, and I don't even know if this is still happening, you could interact with Darth Vader using the AI generated voice of James Earl Jones. As I've said before, I don't play this, but I've seen a number of videos of people interacting with Darth Vader in Fortnite, and they're a stitch.
Yeah.
Jay, have you had an opportunity to watch any of these?
Yes, I've watched quite a few of them, one of them
Mhm.
involving a Jeep Wrangler, another one of them involving the one that you sent me, which was Deadpool and discussion of sand,
Mhm.
and it's hilarious, it really is, and it's creating so much engagement and so much fan buzz, and it's just oh my gosh, it's cracking me up.
Yeah, I had no idea it was AI when I started watching that video, and there was just Darth Vader constantly bringing up sand. People were asking him questions about sand. It's like, "What do you think about sand?" It's like, "It's coarse, it's rough, it gets everywhere." And it's one thing when it's in Anakin's voice, it's another when it's in James Earl Jones.
Right,
And there,
exactly.
and then whoever was playing this Deadpool character is asking him to write poems about sand. It's just
Mhm.
I'm not gonna bother repeat it because I cannot make it as funny as what it is when you're watching it, the video, and I'll try to remember to link a video. I'm sorry, to put a link to one of the videos in the show notes for this. The other thing that's going on around all of that is SAG-AFTRA has filed a lawsuit against Electronic Arts for permitting this to happen. And look, I'm not going to comment on the merits of this much, just other to say that I think people aren't understanding what the lawsuit is all about,
Mhm.
which is the perception seems to be it's a lot of headline reading that's going on here without people looking at the details, that EA is being sued by SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, because they are using James Earl Jones' voice without permission, which is not the case, because we covered this, it was like a couple of years ago, where James Earl Jones signed over to Lucasfilm and Disney the rights to use his voice because in perpetuity, because he's the voice of Darth Vader and that's something he wanted to do. So it's not an issue with his estate or having his permission. However, and I don't know this much about labor law, there is apparently, with whatever deal that they've got with the unions, the gaming company Electronic Arts needed to file a notice with the union that this was a voice that was going to be used and cast. And then I guess they're arguing that there was some sort of opportunity should have been given to the various voice actors that had portrayed Darth Vader in other video games. Again, I'm not going to speak to the merits because I'm not qualified to do so on that. But it's not as simple as James Earl Jones gave Lucasfilm permission to use his voice in the story. That's
Mhm.
probably going to be something that goes into all this, but uh, don't write it off so simply, because it's more of an issue of AI being used and taking away a job from a current voice actor than it is an issue of rights.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to get too far into AI because again, it's just it's a hot topic. People got big opinions on it, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we're concerned about is that artificial intelligence is going to take over art and take jobs from actors, take jobs from artists, take jobs from music performers and the like. And that's something that, there's plenty of interesting AI art that's out there, but you can always tell that's what it is. And it's
It's
also
true.
built on the back of work that real people have done. And so
Right.
we have to be cognizant, we have to be sensitive of that and essentially not steal the work. So again, I can't speak to exactly how this whole thing works with the labor union, but the Actors Guild, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's very sticky situation because AI is such a blessing and a curse in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, for sure.
Yeah. And, James Earl Jones didn't do the voice for Vader in the Jedi games, Fallen Order, Survivor games. They had other actors came in, and those actors did a fine job. I can't even remember off the top of my head who it was, but you can always tell when it's not James Earl Jones. There's just a little
Oh,
bit of that
yeah.
voice that's missing. And,
Mhm.
they use artificial intelligence to do Darth Vader's voice in Obi-Wan Kenobi because Mr. Jones was in his 90s and wasn't really interested in going to the studio to record it. Or maybe
Mhm.
he did, but then they used artificial intelligence to modify it. But
Mhm.
that's where they showed him the ability of the artificial intelligence to replicate his voice, and he agreed to allow that to happen.
Right.
So, yeah, there's that. Okay, well, last story. Have you ever watched the Lego Masters series on Fox?
I haven't, but
Mm.
I know I've seen a couple of the trailers.
Yeah, I have not sat down and watched an episode. I tend to see clips on social media that they'll show up on my feed, especially on Instagram from time to time. Well, the reason why I brought it up is that they are about to kick off or they just did kick off their 5th season. And this is a show where they get a lot of people who are really good at building with Lego. And then they put them in a competition that's overseen by 2 Lego masters that work for Lego and then Will Arnett, of all people. And they give them challenges to build things. And they have a set amount of time. It's kind of like watching a cooking show, a competition where you're getting so much time to cook
Oh,
something,
yeah.
except for now you're building something. Well, they kicked off season 5 with a Star Wars night. And the whole thing started, and I'm not going to give you all the details because you should definitely go out and watch it. It's interesting. They brought out Darth Vader, and then they had a number of Lego planets hanging up on the stage, and then they revealed a Lego Death Star, which proceeded to blow up all these planets.
Oh my gosh.
And then they gave the bottom half, it was the top of each one of these planets. They gave the bottom half to all the different teams, from the different planets, and then they had to create their own Star Wars Lego world to
Oh,
kind of
wow.
demonstrate their personalities and their interests so that the judges could get to know them. And okay, it was a lot of fun. If it had been me, I would have been building something that was like really true to the spirit of Star Wars. This was much closer to the spirit of something like the Star Wars Lego shorts specials that we get, crossed with maybe the Lego movie,
Oh,
that
okay.
type of a tone on it, which
Okay.
was fun. I mean, like, one of the, there's 2 people per team, and these 2 particular contestants made a puppy Star Wars world where Chewbacca
Aw.
was the king. It was cute, but again, it's, I've talked about building Star Wars Lego sets on this show tons of times. I have tons of these
Mhm.
models here like that. That's the type of thing I'm interested in. And so, like I said, so the tone was a little different. It was still fun. And it's got me interested that I might go check out more episodes, but it just wasn't quite the hardcore Star Wars that I was looking for.
That's fair.
Yeah. But yeah, so those episodes show up on, I believe, Hulu, of all places. So if you're interested, you can check them out there
Yeah,
after
I'll have to
they
do
they air.
that.
Yeah, and if nothing
Sweet.
else, just check out the first one because they got stormtroopers wandering around, kind of causing trouble. They would,
That's fun.
yeah, they would occasionally. After the time was up to build, they'd have the contestants come down and present the model they built and kind of talk about it. And a few of them they animated for the presentation, and that was pretty cool to
That's
see.
very
So
cool.
yeah, so it's definitely worth again, checking out the Star Wars episode and nothing else. So there you go.
Yeah, definitely gonna have to do that.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's news. It wasn't much, but we told you about what we had. So hopefully there'll be a little bit more to talk about next week. But it may be quiet for a while now that we've gotten through Star Wars Celebration. We'll see. But thank you all for joining us for it. We hope you did enjoy it. And if you want more of our weekly take on the news, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. And if you would go ahead and rate and review the show once you've done that, that will help us out immensely as it drives the algorithm and helps others find us. If you want more episodes of Podcast Stardust, and there is a whole lot of them out there, another 889, the best place to do that is to head over to directorsapp.com. And while you're there, you can check out a bunch of other great shows on the network, including Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Case Files, Animaniacast, Brews and Blasters, Dork Lair, Doomcast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, and Warp Trails. Jay, where can we be found on social media one more time?
All right. Well, we're very easy to find. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we also maintain some Pinterest pages, and you can check out all of our boards for everything Star Wars related. And we also have 2 different YouTube outlets where you can check out all of our episodes, and that includes the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. And we'd love it if you would subscribe to both of those and share those out with your friends. And then we also have our TeePublic store, which there's a link to that in our show notes, and that has 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of things, from home goods to apparel and pretty much everything in between. So if you are in need of something, and we would love it if you were, and pick something up, and please tag us if you do. Once again, the link to that is in our show notes.
And what's the latest in cosplay?
All right. Well, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snibscosplay. And so you can catch me as Hera, 2 different versions of Hera, to be exact. The fourth sister, Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, my original concept Mandalorian, based on Tahiri Vela from Legends, and much, much more. So once again, that's at j.snibscosplay. And I should have some more events coming up this summer. I'm going to try to do a few more things coming up here. So once again, just check it out.
All right. Upcoming on the show on Monday, we'll be returning to Tales of the Underworld, and we'll be covering the last 3 episodes, which feature Cad Bane. So make sure you stick around for that. And then on Wednesday, we are back to our Revenge of the Sith series. It'll be part 5 that features the Battle of Obi-Wan and General Grievous. So that it picks up at 48 minutes exactly in the movie. So if you watch the next 12, you'll be prepared for that episode, and we hope you come back for that. So all that said, thanks for listening to episode 890 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be